What do you mean when you say time does not heal all wounds?
That saying has been around for such a long time, and I think it's just misconstructed our concept of healing.
Welcome to the Experience Miracles podcast, where we help parents find hope, answers, and drug-free help to overcome your child's chronic health challenges. I'm your host, Dr. Tony Ebel, and I'll be sharing my experiences as both a dad and a doctor on every episode. I can take the latest science and neurology of healing and break it down in the most simple and relatable way possible. We'll take on the toughest topics and answer your biggest questions through interviews with other amazing parents and leading experts, leaving you with practical action steps that you can take to help your child heal and thrive. It's time to expect and experience miracles. Let's get started. All right, parents, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Experience Miracles podcast. We have an experience miracle making homie, bestie. She refers to me as her best hype friend. I think this is as Dr. Scherina, if she were introing me on the podcast, that might make it on to the bio. But Dr. Scherina is with us here today, and it's kind of like every single person we bring on here. I'm going to give the stuff in her bio, but what you're going to get the moment we let her rolling and she starts teaching and sharing and empowering in the way that, as far as all the incredible people I've met, I really mean this, in the way that only she can. And I want to put that into the introduction here. Scherina knows this, my team knows this, but one of the most difficult things for a practitioner to do, especially if we're going into this nervous system focused doctor, a doctor who truly listens to parents and truly addresses the root cause, which is getting into the nervous system, is, well, how do we communicate that to you all? How do we make sense of that to you guys as parents in a way that is truly powerful and truly impactful, where you see the bigness of it and you see the true healing and the real transformation that your whole family know that about this episode. What Dr. Scherina's expertise is not just in the kiddos healing, but the family healing. So moms and dads, we're going to really help you with this episode in a big way. And so Dr. Scherina has an incredible gift and talent to provide that care with a special technique that she'll talk a lot about today. But that care in her office and all of our offices actually starts with the communication and being able to reach you and find you and make sense of it for you. And so we like to think that our platform and our Instagram, PX Docs, is blowing up, but we're just trying to keep up with this boss lady right here with Dr. Scherina. And so that's part of the intro here to you, homie. And then a little bit of fun, a little bit of light in the mood. So this is also a Minnesota-born rock star, so big Vikings fan right here. So Scherina and I are besties for and the list of reasons we're besties just goes on and on and on. She ditched the Midwest because she's smarter than I am and moved to Florida, but she keeps her Minnesota Vikings, which you want to talk about emotional healing, Scherina. Good thing you are an expert in this, and we get this kind of care because if you follow football at all, being a Vikings fan is emotionally traumatic. And then some, but also just an incredible mother, an incredible friend, an incredible team leader. Everything that Dr. Scherina does, you guys, as you're listening in, she does it our favorite way. She goes all in, all out. I mean, even we would say hair, we would say style, just everything about Scherina is all out. And so we love you, lady. This is a full treasure and treat for us to have you on here as we dig into hope, answers, and drug-free help. And I'm going to use that word as the segue. What you're able to do is to dig into layers of your patient's nervous systems and tap into them and get that level of healing opened up in ways that most people don't even know is possible. Most people don't know they need to go after. So we'll get there. But when you started to dig into this career as a pediatric and nervous system focused chiropractor, how early, and give us this part of your story while kind of answering this question, how early did you know that this emotional trauma and this stress on the nervous system got so many layers in? Where did that begin for you within your journey?
Yeah, that was my story. That's why I'm here. So Yeah, when I was under chiropractic care, well, it was network spinal care. It wasn't even chiropractic. I didn't know the two coexisted actually. So, just being under care, I was a broke college student, right? But at that point, you think you're still resilient. Nothing was wrong with me. So I got under care without any expectations, really. I didn't have, or so I thought, I didn't have symptoms. I didn't have any health concerns. And so under care, of course, physical symptoms started to improve. I started noticing those a while later, probably about a year into care. But then that made me realize like a lot had changed about who I am as a person in the meantime. And that was one of the big comments that I started hearing from family members, from friends. They were saying, wow, you're so opinionated now. Like you're so different. Like you're so outgoing. You're outspoken. All of these things that were brand new, all within the span of like 6, 7 months. And I couldn't figure out why. But it was, obviously researching, diving deeper into network spinal, realized like there's so many layers of emotional healing that happens with healing the nervous system.
So, all right. So, I mean, this is what's so fun about doing this podcast and bringing some of our besties on here. I always think I know this story, and then I'm like, what? Give me more on it,
Yeah.
Okay, so the personality, now I guess I get to cheat, right? I've only known you since you were a patient and then became a practitioner. And I got, I've had such a blessing. I remember meeting you officially in person. Remember we had those trainings? It was, speaking of Minnesota, the convention center basement there in Minneapolis. Yep. And your baby boy was truly a baby boy at that time.
Yeah.
So I guess I've always known you as moving forward fully, moving towards exactly what you want to do, exactly who you want to serve, and just moving forward with this unleashed confidence. I think what you're sharing maybe is that previous versions, not before you got care, that wasn't the Scherina we know now. What was life like before? You were quieter, less bold, less, just please share.
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess you could say I hid behind the walls. I hid behind people. I didn't have a voice. I don't know. I know. I mean, I do know that's a lot of it was uprooted in my upbringing, but just very quiet, very timid, very shy, very internal, as you would say. Just couldn't find my voice and didn't even know. Really, honestly, like didn't even know what my purpose was, what I wanted out of life, what I was searching for, why I was even studying medicine in the first place.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that, and this is what I think makes us so helpful to families is, we've talked about this phrase, and we all love it in the work that we do. Like, you're generally best equipped to serve the person you once were. And if we really just, and this is kind of going to be like the third or fourth chunk I wanted to talk about with you today, but we kind of slide that up to the front a little bit and then continue to tie it all together. But one thing we know when we serve these kiddos, and I guess we'll even just make it very, very frank. Let's say we're doing a perfect storm workshop. We're serving a perfect storm family where the child has a level 3 autism diagnosis, and literally at that moment, their neurophysiological system is so locked in, so subluxated, as we would say, they have no voice. They are nonverbal. And so that's a very real life example of a lot of patients that we serve. And what we can tell you guys is what Dr. Scherina and I and the PX Docs Network, what we want to do and what we do everything we can to make happen is to literally go into that child's healing system, go into their nervous system and give them that voice. Now, that's literal in that story of a child with autism. We've had literally hundreds of cases at our clinic of nonverbal children who now today, if you met them, you would have no idea they were that deeply locked into autism. But you know who else needs that voice of confidence, needs that tension, that stress, that trauma out of their way so that they can go into life and find their purpose? Everyone. Every child of everything. Symptoms, like you said, like you were, it doesn't need to be symptoms. You know who else needs that when we're in the thick of this perfect storm and healing journey? Moms and dads need to be able to get rid of that stress, get rid of that sympathetic tension that's holding them back from moving forward. Because the only way we can help our kids heal, the only way we can have our kids meet their optimal outcomes is if the whole family is moving forward. And so what I love about this in your story is, well, that's the story. That's the structure and the sequence of how we help people, right? You've got to remove the layers that are holding us back and create that release, right? Before you can then recharge, recalibrate, and move forward. So let's go into what's holding people back, okay? So what we know is that when people start to research health, right? When they get into kind of this chiropractic vibe, this root cause thing, and they're starting to go, okay, let's figure out what caused our kids and caused ourselves to get sick. The most common categories of information that are going to be out there are going to be around diet, nutrition. So we'll call that chemical health, right? So chemistry, toxins, that sort of stuff. And then obviously there's going to be a ton about movement-based stuff. If it's kids on the spectrum, we're talking movement-based therapies like PT and OT. And if it's just general health, we're talking about movement. People need to get healthy, right? And go after it that way. And so that tends to be the two chunks of things that families are moved towards. But the third category of emotional and mental stress is by far, and the coolest thing about our profession is this was written about literally as far back as the early 1900s when Dr. Dee Palmer talked about the 3 T's. So moms, if you've missed it on previous episodes, we call it traumas. So that would kind of categorize as physical stress, like birth trauma, forceps, vacuum. Toxins, that would categorize what you're very well versed in, probably the glutens, the caseins, those sort of things. But that third one, thoughts and emotional stress, we're going there way early. We're going there way often with Dr. Scherina, because what we find as nervous system focused chiropractors is the first two are way easier to get out of the way than the third one. So from a 101 perspective, taking that introduction into the 3 T's, you speak to this better than anybody else on earth here, buddy. So take us into that conversation for our kids and ourselves. Why is that part of nervous system healing so important to, number one, become aware of, so that number two, we can get some action done towards it?
Yeah. I mean, you said it the best. Like it just clouds everything. And actually, in my opinion, emotional health is the one thing we're so unaware of. We grow up thinking that this is our personality, this is the way we are, these are the decisions we've always made, or I was raised that way, so this is all I know. Not understanding that traumas definitely have a say in that. They shape the way we think. They shape the way we approach relationships. They shape the way we connect with people. So when you take all of that out, when you're healing, it's of course it's going to change. But yeah, I think again, the reason why I got into network spinal and why I love it so much is because when it comes to emotional healing, there's not many options out there. We can go to therapy, and I love therapy, but it's talk therapy. You know, we now know, scientifically speaking, that trauma, all of that stress is stored within the body. So we can say, go ahead and be happy all day and talk about our problems and go outside and smile all day. But if you're holding those tension and stress patterns within your body, try and be happy through that. It's not really going to work. So that's again, being a nervous system focused chiropractor, focusing in on that emotional healing. It's important. It's one of the steps
Is it so exciting and awesome how equally intricate, complicated, and, just fascinating the nervous system is, and the conversation around stress is, and then equally or more so simple it is. And this is the beautiful thing, right? Because, so I will be the king of simple forever, right? With my Iowa farmer background. And I just think that that's how God made me. It's like, okay, I can understand the prefrontal cortex's role in this. I could go into an hour conversation about the amygdala. Dr. Scherina and I could nerd out with you about the deep, intricate neurological components of stress and healing and everything else. But you don't need that from us. You don't need that, okay? You don't need us to go that deep. The truth of the matter is, no matter what form of stress you went through, the body feels it, the body holds it, and the body traps it in. And so on a previous episode with the perfect storm, we talked about that. So the perfect storm is a very sequential, pediatric-based 3 Ts. So first trauma that shows up in most of our case histories is actually emotional stress, disempowerment, anxiety, exhaustion on mama's nervous system during the preconception and pregnancy journey. And because mom's nervous system is baby's nervous system, if mom's nervous system is stuck in this sympathetic vagus nerve exhausted stress mode, well, the baby's nervous system is literally not only going to be stuck there, but it's going to develop there. And then there's the physical trauma of birth trauma, and then there's toxins later on. So parents out there, when you're going to heal your kiddo, and you're probably going to heal yourself too, most Instagram influencers are talking about toxins, gut, chemicals, environment, microbiome. Awesome. They're barking up the right tree, but they're actually usually on the third component on the list of what's really holding a kiddo back. And so, but I'll give it to this example, and then Scherina run with it as well. What just yesterday in clinic, and I told you, I was like, wow, that's God's timing. Like, I knew I got to have this conversation with you. And yesterday, our whole doc team was sitting around our table, just digging into this, looking to understand it better so we can help kids better. That's it. That's the whole basis of all of our work, right? We're constantly getting better because we know these kids and families are up against it. So we did intake on 2 infants yesterday. And parents, I want you to hear the simplicity of this contrast. So intake number 1 was a 4-month-old infant who is really struggling to latch, nurse, digest, sleep. So they're the epitome of colic, right? They've got all the neurophysiological challenges, and if those stay, kids don't grow out of colic, they grow into developmental delays, sensory issues, gross motor problems, you name it. And so this kiddo, though, when we dig into the case history here, Dr. Scherina, the pregnancy was wonderful. Mom was under care, right? She was in a community. She was empowered. She was listening to podcasts. She had a plan. So that part of that kid's nervous system development, we could chalk that up to awesome. There wasn't that emotional trauma in that kiddo's life. The second case was literally 2 weeks different in age and the first kiddo, by the way, had a failed induction and emergency C-section. Okay, so there was a lot of physical trauma that went into that case, along with some chemical trauma, right? The second case had the same birth history. It was a failed induction, emergency C-section. So we're talking about the same physical trauma. We're talking about the same chemical trauma. But when we dug into that prenatal case history, they had moved. The husband had just graduated from school, had opened up a practice, different type of healthcare practitioner, had opened up a practice. The rock star mom had been a big part of that. So they were buried, her words, buried by stress during the whole pregnancy. And so what we do, same as you guys do down there at your practice in Orlando, we not only take this case history, but we use technology to measure the stress on the nervous system and find the depth that we're up against, right? I don't like to say the word severity, but I like the words significance or depth that we're up against. And the first child, without the emotional trauma during the pregnancy, his HRV was in the green. And all you need to know, moms and dads, is in the green is good. It's a very resilient, ready to heal. We're very confident that kid's going to get, a dozen or so adjustments and bounce back like a little boss. We gave the second kiddo with a lot of emotional stress into their nervous system tethered into it. And who knows, if we'd have dug deeper into epigenetics, maybe that mom's whole lineage is stress, right? Genetically to that. Well, that child got 3 times as long of a care plan. And I set up long question, but it's the neurology that we know as clinicians to make different recommendations based upon different journeys. But that's on this side of the fence. You won't get that from conventional, even psychologists. They're going to just literally say the same is the same for everyone. And so, sorry, it's me. I'm sure you knew this coming into this, that I not only have long answers, Scherina, I have long questions, okay, when we come into it. So can you go even further into the neurology of why that child, in the second scenario where there was emotional stress and anxiety into their neurodevelopment, can you give us some understanding of how that gets into the kid's nervous system, and then go ahead and keep running with it. And then what do we need to do to get it out of there?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, that goes back to my own story. So when I was expecting, it was my first year in practice with all of the knowledge that I had, with school, everything. I was doing everything right, getting adjusted, being taken care of, taking care of myself. It was a beautiful pregnancy. I mean, if I knew every pregnancy would be like that, I would always be pregnant because it was that beautiful. And so still he was born, and we noticed that he wasn't nursing on one side. There was still some stressors happening there, and still he's still showing some signs, and that was all developmental, right? So we noticed things happening towards my last month of pregnancy. Like he was tucked into the one side of my pelvis, which wasn't ideal for birth. Thankfully, he moved. But all of those little factors, we tend to forget that as beautiful and as perfect as things may seem, there can always be some sort of stressor, and it doesn't have to be a lot of stress, right? Everyone has their own capacity to take stress on, including tiny humans. We forget that too. But when it comes to stress levels like hormones, it's been studied time and time again that the chemicals that mom has in her body, baby's going to feel that too, right? We know narcotics, they get passed through the placenta, they get passed through all of that, and baby will feel that. So what's the difference between if mom's hormones are regulated, babies are not going to be irregulated as well. So when they're born, they have a harder time. Their bodies are having a harder time creating hormones. So if moms are born on high cortisol, babies actually show to be born on low cortisol. So their body has to do so much more work to create that cortisol to bring them back up to equilibrium, to that equal level. So it's all a factor. It's all a factor. Yeah.
So take us to, I love the way you phrase it. And again, that's what's just amazing is your ability, and especially you guys, we're going to put it in the show notes, and I'm going to talk about this a ton at the end, but you have got to follow Dr. Scherina's page on Instagram. She is my 100% what we go for. I love to talk about the nervous system and healing at Pediatric Chiropractic, whether verbally or videos or written word. But Dr. Scherina, you just have an ability to especially articulate it through written word and spoken word as to these real, pun intended here, these are emotional conversations. The conversation we're having, we kind of got right into it today. I always say during the Perfect Storm workshop or webinar, like, it's actually my least favorite one. We don't like to go backwards. When we dig into these case histories and we find where these stressors and traumas came from for these kiddos and for these mamas, we just as soon skip that part and go forward because we're so fascinated, we're so excited, we're so in love with healing. But we can't get you all the way healed if we don't get that all the way understanding. So one of the really awesome, simple, powerful ways, you said it before, is it's stored in the body. Stress of all kinds is stored in the body. So can you take us there and expand upon that, how it gets trapped in the body, and maybe even break it down a little bit to like, where do we need to be looking in the body to find this nervous system stress? And because if we can find it, we can do something about it and get rid of it, right?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you an exact place that the body stores the stress. So that way we can look directly there. But again, it goes back to everybody's completely different. We're all going to store our stress and our traumas in different places. From my experience in practice, I notice women, for example, women store a lot of our tension and stress in our pelvis. We go through childbirth, we have a menstruation cycle. All of that stuff can get stored there. We tend to hold a lot of our tension there. Our men tend to hold all of the tension in our upper traps area, lower neck area, weight of the world on your shoulders sort of deal, right? So there's so many different places. Some of us store stress in our gut, which is why our gut starts to get so inflamed. Everything, if you've been one of those people that you bloat with literally every bite you take, or everything you eat upsets your stomach or causes some sort of reaction, that's probably stress and tension stored in the gut. So like I said, I wish I could give you an exact place. It's going to be different for everyone. And it could be a combination of so many different places because of the way that the body layers that tension and stress.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool, right? And that's what's fun about doing this podcast and writing all of our articles and things like we have on pxstocks.com. You know, when you're in practice like Dr. Scherina and our teams are, you see these patterns emerge, right? Like we're talking about with women holding and men holding it there and kids holding it there. We can literally even create these clinical correlation patterns. So I can, based upon a child's, birth, I could tell you that a forceps delivery leaves a certain subluxation, which is our word for stress stuck in the neurospinal system. So kind of stress stuck in the body and on that sympathetic dominance. We can create these clinical correlations and patterns between a C-section birth versus a forceps or a vacuum or a breech position or a child that is going through these different challenges, even within their what we call symptomatology, which is just an outward expression of abnormal neurophysiology. Now, I got really nerdy there for 30 seconds, right? But what we know as nervous system focused chiropractors is we actually know this 3-step sequence, and we can really keep it to 3 steps. We know that once that stress, that subluxation, that neurological dysfunction gets into the spine and the nervous system, well, it's that neurospinal central and autonomic nervous system. So that's step 1. Well, there's anatomy. There's a pathway that we can track, that we have studied, that we know better than anybody else in healthcare. We know where that neurological communication between the central nervous system, so brain, spinal cord, brainstem, and then tissues, organs, glands, cells, go. So step 2 is we go from what we call the system, the master control system of the central nervous system and autonomic nervous system. You can use those parents interchangeably for this conversation. That is the master control system. Second step is we start to chase down various organ systems within the body, right? So for some kiddos, their immune system is the one that bears the brunt of this stress. For other kiddos, it's their gross motor system, and they really struggle with motor milestones. For others, it's going to be their digestive system, and they're the constipated eczema sort of kiddo. And so we then start to track it into these systems, organs, tissues, and glands. Well, when those start to malfunction or dysfunction, they're going to spit out certain symptoms. What medicine does is medicine says, okay, this category of symptoms is this condition. Here's your medication to try and shut it down. So they don't even go into level 2. They don't go into step 2, let alone step 1, which is the central and autonomic nervous system. And so this, I want to keep mapping this out, because then we get into natural healing, right? Then we get into holistic integrative healing, which Dr. Scherina and I are the biggest fans of. We just do something a little bit different, a little bit deeper. Because a lot of times with natural and functional healing, it's like, okay, well, this system over here, the microbiome is a mess. Let's work on that. Or in a movement-based therapy, hey, this system over here, your child's gross motor function, they've got hypertonicity here, but they've got core weakness. So let's work on strengthening the core with the PTOT. Well, that's getting there, because that's getting into the middleman, at least. But we get in to the deepest layer possible, don't we, Dr. Scherina, with the central and autonomic nervous system and the vagus nerve. And so what we really wanted to drive home with this conversation today is that stress of all forms, it goes all the way in to the central nervous system, to the autonomic nervous system, to the brainstem, and it gets locked in there. And the same word that kind of kicked me into this part, there's a pattern that emerges within this central nervous system. And the coolest thing is we now have technology and techniques that we can use to assess you and your child and we can do this on your beautiful, brand new baby. Dr. Scherina's wizardry shows up really here. The coolest thing ever is when you show on Instagram, when you're doing network and doing an entrainment or doing an adjustment on a brand new baby, and you can just see as you get connected to them and you find where that stress is stored in their tiny little bodies, and you can see it move on out. Sorry, you're also wired like me. I just had Ludacris pop into my head right there, which, I don't think you play Ludacris in your healing space, do you? Or maybe? Is that a Friday thing? Okay, all right. If I
After hours.
get adjusted, can we just try? Can we try it one time? Yeah. Okay. All right. So back on track. Ludacris, it's not my fault. Ludacris has influenced all of our lives. And sometimes, you say the word move and, he just shows up in your head. So, but the truth is, that stress shows up in the central nervous system, and we can track it, measure it with technology. So I want you to take us there first, buddy. And then we use a different kind of techniques where we can also track it and find it when a patient is on the table. And so start with the technology and how important that is to the work that you do with the insight scans, thermal, EMG, and HRV. Give us your communication and interpretation of the value of those scans. And then how do you parlay that into the work you're on the table? And I know I'm asking a tough question because we're just talking about this verbally versus showing it actually happening in an office. But walk these families through the technology, and then let's really go deep on the network technique that you practice that is so incredibly different and so incredibly needed in today's world.
Yeah. So the big scan, I mean, we use all the scans, but HRV has been clinically shown to show that emotional fight or flight, what your body's doing if you're stuck in fight or flight where you're at. So that is my bread and butter when it comes to where I'm contacting the spine. So where in the network spinal, I mean, there's so many layers to network spinal itself, but the specific contacts I make to that parasympathetic nervous system, that is the scan I will use. So yeah. Obviously thermography as well. We use surface EMG to give it a big, beautiful picture of what's going on. And I think in my office, since I do have both, I'm not just straight network spinal, we do adjustments as well. And it's powerful because we're able to see what's going on with our kiddos, what's going on with the nervous system. We can pinpoint exactly where we need to go instead of really focusing. Yes, we're going to address your entire body, right? But we need to focus on the priorities of what layer we're at currently. So I think it's huge. It's amazing. But
perfect. So that technology helps you know what you're up against. So HRV, totally. And just to pull that thread a little bit. So, we have to get to share with this audience an unfortunate reality so we've been in practice for a good bit. We've been running HRVs. So you've looked at you and Dr. Casey and the team have looked at thousands of HRVs, and you see patterns emerge with certain case histories are going to parlay into certain HRVs. So we see these neurophysiological correlations. Now, what we've seen and what we've talked about here within our whole PX Talks network is we've seen HRVs year after year get worse, get more depleted, get more exhausted, get more out of balance. And I really wish I could just partition that conversation to parents and be like, oh, we're the ones stressed out. We're the ones, exhausted. Our kids are more stressed out, sympathetic dominant, and exhausted than ever before. When I say kids, I mean teenagers, I mean grade schoolers, I mean preschoolers, and I mean brand new babies. And we can measure this on heart rate variability technology. And so we're real passionate. In fact, that's one of the real impetuses of why the podcast came alive now, because in clinic, I see families more stressed, more exhausted than ever, including infants, especially after all the overreaction and all the BS that we did to pregnant mamas during the COVID years. We see HRVs have gotten very significantly worse in the last couple of years. So we have decided to take significantly more action, just like you have with your directory and your Instagram page, Dr. Scherina. So, okay, I guess that's not really so much of a question. It's just a statement of like what we're seeing in our clinics is we're up against it more. Now, what I think that does here, Dr. Scherina, what I know that does is that actually brings your care, the fact that you provide all the techniques afforded a chiropractor, a nervous system focused chiropractor at your practice. You guys deliver, I don't even really want to call it the traditional because it's anything but traditional, but you make adjustments in that way that maybe someone would be more associated with. But then you are a world-class top expert in network. You know how hard it is for me to say the word spine. Network, nervous system care, okay? Yes, so Can you take this audience through the layers and the depth that network is allowed to tap into and describe what you're talking about when you say the word network?
Yeah. So with network, of course, it being very emotional based. So we weren't taught this. This is based off of my own research with going into where I'm contacting and why I'm contacting those areas. So we're basically removing stress and tension from the actual cord. So that's why I'm not contacting bone. That's why the work is super gentle. So a lot of people, that's one of the top questions I get. How is that light touch so effective? How is that baby moving like that with just barely anything going on? Well, first of all, pediatric adjustment isn't forceful anyways, but with network spinal being that way on everyone, adults, seniors, athletes. It's super gentle because we're removing what we're contacting that dentate ligament on that actual spinal cord, and that releases that tension. Now, my understanding is that the dentate ligament is so close to that dorsal horn of the spinal cord, which obviously that's connected straight to the limbic system. So that's your emotional system right there. So that is exactly why network spinal tends to go towards that more emotional healing route. But as far as the actual work of network spinal, so there's so many different layers, right? There's a lot of, again, we go back to the patterns. So not only is it our HRV that goes into really focusing in on the patient of what's going on, but their body patterns. So as soon as they lay down on the table, even when they get into the consultation, what's showing up as far as their emotional history, their traumatic history, what's going on? Are they showing more patterns of trust issues? Are they showing more patterns of identity? Those are the emotional patterns that go into every single different phase that we have within network spinal. That again, though, that's how I know where to contact. So it's a lot of people also ask, a lot of people also ask, like, am I just putting my hands on the body and expecting something to happen? No, we're going based off of your body's patterns of what you're showing that specific day.
Yeah, perfect. So that's what I love about this. This is right where I wanted to get. It's into the intricate granular detail.
Yeah.
This is what y'all need to know about when you see a PX doctor, especially if you are in the Orlando area, and if you're not, that airport is just easy to get into and wonderful. So just go see this amazing doctor. And yes, I just added another 100 DMs to your already 100 unread DMs from this morning, because we see Dr. Scherina's Instagram page, which is tied together with us. She's got the PX Docs directory there, so we could all serve together because we are one and the same, and she is a leader in our movement, and that is a massive understatement. And I guess where I'm going with this is the deal is you go in with a very intricate clinical plan. There is a really thorough assessment through case history, through identification of how this child or how this patient is expressing their neurological dysregulation and their dysfunction, so subluxation, dysautonomia. You're going to really identify that. You're going to really categorize and pattern recognize that. Then you have the scan. So that's layer one, right? Diving deeper into the case history. Layer two is we do use this technology. So now you've got even more real clear neurophysiological clues. And then layer three, you build a care plan. So the other distinguishing difference, right, from a PX doctor and you guys and even other chiropractors is just this multi-phase care plan. So hang with me here, homie, and let's break down that for most patients. And again, I know we got to generalize, which is our least favorite job. Our favorite job is the personalization, customization, like crazy to each individual patient. That's what we do every single day in practice. But as a general rule, what is the first phase of healing that you are looking to go after within your work? Describe that for us.
The first phase, like from the care plan?
Yeah, just kind of like where are most patients neurologically within their layers of nervous system dysregulation? What are some of the words you're using to describe your goals and your directives for that first phase, maybe 12 visits, 1 month, 2 month, 3 months of neurological healing. And let's go ahead and categorize it for, somebody that's been through it. I think a lot of parents are going to find this podcast, hopefully we found you and you're early in the journey and your child is symptom free, or it's just starting with colic and it's just starting with ear infections and it's just starting with constipation and you don't have any sensory spectrum neurological diagnosis yet. But I know that a lot of people that are going to listen in here, Scherina, their kiddos are multi-layered stressed and they're in this kind of chronic illness journey. So for a chronically dysregulated nervous system, what is phase one of the care plan?
Yeah. So I'm pretty blunt when it comes to with nervous system work of phase one being like, do not expect the miracles. I expect the miracles, but do not expect the dramatic changes. If your baby's coming in with colic, if your baby is, or if your kid's ADHD, we're not going to be taking them off of medications in that first 2 months of care. That's not what we expect. If does it happen? It has happened before. And that's, those are miracle cases, but that's not what, the nervous system doesn't really work like that. It's slow. It's with presence. It's with slowness. That's especially when working with the parasympathetic nervous system. We're looking for that slow, sustainable change because again, that's sustainable. So we're looking for longevity when it comes to healing the nervous system. You said it before, and it's so funny. This is like the number 2 question. How do we heal the nervous system? What can we do? And I wish I could tell you to go outside barefoot, step in the sun, and read a book every day, and that's going to heal your nervous system. But the way that the nervous system stores that tension and stress, that's not it. It's not going to be enough.
Okay, so let's let you keep rolling there. So in today's world, we are blessed, we are excited, and we are frustrated. And so the blessing and the excitement for Scherina and I is that the world is waking up to the conversation around nervous system dysregulation being a core foundational cause of what? Everything. So therefore, nervous system regulation and nervous system healing being a foundational first step that we all need to go through. But so that's awesome. So everybody on Instagram and out there that's, cold plunging and infrared sauna in and walking in nature, holding their chicken barefoot while doing deep breathing. They're all moving in well, don't bring a chicken with you or a goat. Those are high-strung animals. I live on a farm, everyone. Take my advice here. Find a calmer animal, okay? Which I haven't found one yet. But anyways, making a joke and being real at the same time. So this is awesome. The conversation is moving in the right direction. And so that's phase 1. So we'll call it kind of the society's healing care plan. Okay, number 1. Figure out that the nervous system is the boss. Figure out that we're all dealing with deeper, nastier, just, let's be blunt, just real bad layers of nervous system dysregulation, dysautonomia, sympathetic dominance, and exhaustion. Like, I've been writing articles about this for the last 2 years and hired an entire SEO team for this little rant we're on right here, because I know that people, 1, need to know about this conversation, but 2, what they need to do is not just walk out in nature, not just do affirmations in the morning, not just, have some melatonin before they go to bed. The trap of all this is nervous system stress gets in deeper. That is literally the conversation we're having today with Dr. Scherina. And so the first phase of healing, you need help. Your child needs help to make it happen. I'll just be extra blunt on blunt. You need one of us to first get things moving in the right direction and to release that stuck sympathetic stress, to wake up and stimulate the parasympathetics and the vagus nerve. Guys, your stress is so locked in, so downtrodden, and this is for your kiddos too, and so deep in there. Nature isn't potent enough. Saunas aren't potent enough. Cold bath isn't potent enough. Supplements, I could go on and on. They are not potent enough to get into this layer of the parasympathetic nervous system like a nervous system focused chiropractor can. So Dr. Scherina, when you look at the options out there, I know it's a lot of work for you to put into what you're doing with your Instagram page. You have a beautiful baby boy. You have your own health. You have your own practice. You have your own team. And yet you stepped into this space where you write about real nervous system healing at a depth and a contrast that few can. So where do patients and parents really need to go first if they're really going to get serious about nervous system regulation and healing?
Us. I wish I could say it. I know. I wish I could say it more simply than that. And again, I hear the frustration of everyone out there of what do we need to do, and grateful to God that nervous system is on the map. Everyone's aware of it. We are learning about it. Yes, thankful. And to be clear, I do all those things. I do the barefoot. I do the movement every single day. I read the books. I pray. I do all of those things. Yep. And that's all to support the nervous system as you heal. That is supportive. It is not healing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Keep on. So this is huge. This is, guys, buddy, nobody's having this conversation. That's why we're here. We are going to push this conversation far and wide because you just have to get to this depth. I am intentionally going to be a broken record on every one of these podcast episodes, especially this one about this conversation, where real nervous system healing happens and how it really happens and the depth you need to access. And so what is nervous system healing look like? That first step is getting into the parasympathetics, right? Getting into that part of the nervous system and just bringing it back online. So when that happens, let's go back into that first phase of a healing plan. How do you start to know? Now, and I actually covered this on a previous episode, and I'm going to do more about we call it the 3 R's, right, of neurological healing. And so phase 1 is not when the big miracles happen for 98% of cases, right? Phase 1 is where little stuff, what we call neurological soft signs, which are essential to healing, they begin to happen. So in your clinic, month 1, month 2, and you're helping a really dysregulated, really deeply locked in nervous system heal, what are some little granular signs that things are moving in the right direction, that you're getting the parasympathetic system to respond, that you're getting the vagus nerve to wake up? And I really love, I lost it there, the word you use is you're striving for some stability. Right? So we're stimulating, we're activating, but we get really excited when we start to see some consistency and stability within that system, right? So what are some clues? Because what I know on this platform, especially Scherina, and you get it in your inbox too, we have a lot of families who are going to a nervous system focused chiropractor. And maybe those nervous system focused chiropractors, even in our own network here with PX Docs, they're not as far down the road as you and I are yet in understanding the value of communication. So maybe they lightly explain to patients what they need to look for early on. But what we really need to do is we really go heavy there, don't we? Yeah. Because we know it's disheartening when it takes a long time. We know that you want it to be done yesterday. And so what are those neurological soft signs, those more granular signs you can turn parents to within the first 30, 60, 90 days of healing that you can start to say to them, hey, when you see that, get excited. Good things are happening. We're going in the right direction. What's your list there?
Yeah, and I always call these the small wins, and they're really the biggest wins ever. Yeah. But I'll start with our kids breathing their way through a panic attack, being able to stand in a car ride line without freaking out that there's a million kids around them. One of my quadriplegic girls, she's about 10 years old. She can breathe her way through a seizure now. She can't even speak, and she can say, I did it through that. Like those are the small wins. Of course, we're not expecting to see her walk again, but if she can breathe through a seizure, that's huge, Kids communicating that they're hungry. That's a tiny little win that you would never expect, but I just posted about this yesterday. Like, we don't even know our body's cues anymore. We're not paying attention to our body's sensations. So when a kid is so dysregulated, they don't even know what they're feeling. They don't know what anger feels like. They don't know that they're frustrated or angry, and they're just going to lash out. Now that they can say, I'm hungry or I'm tired, those are huge wins. For adults, it's again, the little things, like maybe you need to go to bed earlier, or maybe you're choosing to not repeat a pattern again. Maybe it's a choice that you made, I don't know, in the dating world, like dating the same person over and over again, and now you're not going to choose to do that. Seems small, but they're huge. They're huge. Yeah.
This is awesome, because these are the signs. So if we're going to be 1000% about nervous system healing, well, then we need to put a roadmap and a set of expectations and milestones for our patients that you can experience as you go along, for your child, for yourself. And so the coolest thing is we can actually go back here to the technology too. So the coolest thing about the scans in a nervous system focused chiropractor. So one of the dead giveaways, that you're actually seeing a real nervous system focused chiropractor, is they use this technology and they're having these conversations, because these conversations on their own and these sort of assessments that we do on the table are very valuable. They're very core and foundational to the work that we do. But come on, it's 2024 and we're going to release this podcast. So if we have HRV and we have thermal and we have EMG and a chiropractor is not using them, well, then they're outdated in their neurological clinical approach. And I'll just say it as it is with that, because we also need to use this technology to see these patterns shift in your physiology and your neurology in the early stages, because it's the same story there that Scherina just shared. We're not looking for home runs within HRV and scan changes, especially HRV. It takes a long time to recalibrate the nervous system in that way. But these subtle, small shifts in your child scans or in your scans, you're going to see us come running into the room like a lunatic, full of excitement, so excited that we can see your nervous system healing. And so then this actually keeps going forward because parents do ask us all the time, right? Like, what else can I be doing? What else can I be doing to support this? And I really love it when our patients actually use that word because I know they're picking up what we're putting down. You used it before, right? So the healing happens here and then support happens there at home. And so that's a real easy way to think about it, moms and dads. When you're going in to get adjusted with your family, you're going in to get access to real, true nervous system healing. When you're taking things into your own hands at home and living this awesome lifestyle in that way, you're supporting regulation and function and giving that better resiliency over time. So the answer is, which one's better? Both. Okay, that's the answer. But doing them in the right order is the magic sauce. So carrying the wins out, we also then get extra excited. So now if we go into like 6 months, 8 months, maybe even a tougher case that's even longer, what we really love to see is that when a child then can go back to their therapies or go back to something they were maybe doing previous to nervous system chiropractic, right, Scherina? And the child was either plateaued or getting no response. And then after we get their nervous system back into balance, back into regulation, back to a more stable vagus nerve responsive parasympathetic regulated state, now they go back into these other avenues of healing. And we can see just exponential results that weren't there before, right? So that's big healing. That comes a little bit or a lot of bit longer into the care plan. But, there's just these layers of celebrations we're going to have with you all along the way. So what about the middle? Before we leave this care plan and the healing conversation, I truly believe, homie, you are the world's foremost expert in nervous system healing. And I'm just going to triple tap on it one more time because that is a different conversation than nervous system support. Right? And regulation. So we have to stay here just one more layer. What about the messy middle? What about when a child or a patient is healing? You know it's happening. You're excited that it's happening. And then you're like, oh, crap, it's happening. Because they are good. And emotional healing, this is a big part of it, right? So I had to go here with you today, get to go here with you today. What about the messy middle? What if somebody is going through a neurological detox and on the outside, it's not so fun, while on the inside, real, deep, actual healing is happening? What do you say to them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, healing is never clean, right? It is messy. And it's hard to accept that the messiness is actually the healing. But when we experience, like, I'll just give an example for adults, right? As we're healing, we start to feel more. So we tend to, when it comes to emotions, we tend to numb ourselves. The more dysregulated we become, we numb ourselves. We just ignore it. We have to go on about our day. We don't take the time to acknowledge what we're truly feeling. So when you are healing, you need to slow down. Your body's naturally going to start to slow down and you're going to start to feel those things come up. You're going to start to feel more physical symptoms. You're going to start to feel more emotions. You can have emotional breakdowns. Maybe it was someone that was emotionless before and now they're sitting in their car, like, what is going on here? And it doesn't feel good. It's not going to feel good. But to me, that's a celebration. Like, hey, you can actually feel now, right? But again, it can be messy. And this is the point where a lot of people feel like they're regressing or they feel like they get to a plateau, and it's not a plateau. It is part of the process. So if we're feeling that as adults, imagine what our kids are going through, right? They feel they could lash out. And I see this a lot with care, a lot with our kids and parents. They don't know what to do. They're frustrated, but it's part of the process. So my best, and this is where that support comes in. This is when I start to have those conversations. This is when we need to have that support at home. Maybe we can add in, going out, some more playtime for the kids. Let's look at nutrition there. That's when the support starts to come in.
It's beautiful. It's important to talk about, the road to neurological healing is anything but linear and anything but clean. And the coolest thing is, we just covered this at the last training, right? And the better we get at it, okay, this is just real. This is our job. This is what the PXX network is doing. This is really on me, especially in a big way. And I love this responsibility. We are getting better every day. We are doing everything we can to create, if we can find more speed, 0.8% more speed into the healing, we'll do it, right? By getting better at our technique or our clinical protocol. If we can get through these detoxes and these messy middles a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster, a little bit smoother, we'll be able to do that. And that's something that both of our practices have figured out over the last 2 to 3 years to do better with our intensive programs, right? And so a lot of our intensive patients, I have one I started with yesterday, who I will happily, that's yesterday. So we're recording this today. So I don't think you've been able to watch those videos or anything yet, but you wait till you see this kiddo's healing on day one and the momentum we already have happening. And what has me so excited is it's an intensive case. It's a tough neurological case. So they're going to go from here for 2 weeks down to you for 2 weeks. And so we share and collaborate on a lot of these tough neurological cases because our practices are just at that layer, right, where we're built for that. And then you guys take care of a lot of them on your own. And, parents, I'll just say this about the intensive program. We'll put the links to both practices. We'll put the links to the intensive program in the show notes. But what it is, it's for kiddos who are at that, and adults too, at that super extra deep layer of neurological exhaustion, and you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's worked. Well, that means no one's got that deep into the nervous system like we will with these intensives. And then it's such a wonderful program because a lot of healing happens in that 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of those small things that are monumental things that we just got done talking about happen. And then the biggest, coolest thing from an intensive care plan is once we go through those 2 weeks and we run about 4, 5, 6 different sets of these scans we've been talking about in that time too, we have figured that patient out. We have their pattern. We have their plan. I see you smiling on that. So in that first 2 weeks, it's like, okay, now we know what it's going to take. And it might take 2 more years, right, of some deeper neurologically focused healing. But if you are listening to this podcast because your child or you went through deep emotional trauma in addition to physical, we're not trying to let physical trauma or toxic trauma, we're not letting that out of the bag. I'm messing that analogy up. We're not getting that, get out of jail free card. It is everybody talking about that on Instagram and everywhere else. They're dead on, but we got to get into this if it happened. And for everybody, to some degree or fashion, it did happen. So I'll leave it at, I just want you to check out the intensive program. And moms and dads on this, when we get into these kind of action steps, which is where we're going towards the close of this episode, the moment your gut instinct goes, then go. I'm not going to put words to that. Literally the most accurate thing Dr. Scherina and I can tell you. You want to know the test that works every single time? Is mom and dad's gut innate instinct as to, hey, something's wrong, and I think we need to do this to get it better. We listen to you at a level you'll never find another doctor, because I've never found anything more helpful in my practice than listening to mom and dad's gut instinct and honoring it and going right into it with action. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's there. One more thing I wanted to talk to you about here, Dr. Scherina, because it's just, again, it's one of my favorite write-ups you've done. I have it saved. I have many of your posts saved in my Instagram. So when I go to write, because the hardest part of me, I'm the opposite. This is why we're a good pair here, buddy. I am Tony the talker. I like to talk about it in words and audios and videos, and then sometimes to slow down and write it out, I'm a little bit like, oh, this is so hard. And then your ability to grab your phone and literally write it out. So I save so many of your Instagram posts, and I'll use them to go into a podcast or to go into a video. I don't know if I've ever told you that before, but you're my homie and my hero. Okay, here, buddy. Honored. So it's just incredible what you can do. So one of my favorite ones is time does not heal all wounds. Okay. So I know we're in the fourth quarter here of the episode, but I do feel like this is one that parents and patients need to heal. What do you mean when you say time does not heal all wounds? I think it's the conversation we've been having, but let's have it with that whole analogy too.
Yeah, that saying has been around for such a long time, and I think it's just misconstructed our concept of healing because
Come on.
we tend to with those same words, okay, let's just wait it out. Let's just sit here and it's all going to get better with time. Things are going to improve, which life may improve, but what's happening within does not. It's not just going to go away on its own. Again, this comes back to our conditioning. This comes back to the way the trauma, the stress changes us. It clouds us, and it's not just going to go away on its own. So that's where, when I hear those words, when I hear just give it some time, it just gets me so frustrated because I know what's happening inside. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's key, because what this whole conversation comes down to is the sequence of healing is now proven because the sequence of the stress perfect storm that our kids and our families go through is proven. We can see it in case histories. We can see it in documented research studies. We can see it in our clinical experience and our technology and our assessments on the table. So we see it and we know it. And now it's time to do something about it. And the way that healing happens is step one, you need us to help. You need us to kickstart it. You need us to generate it. A neurologically focused chiropractic adjustment is by far and away the greatest kept secret in all of healthcare. And it's not much of a secret anymore because Dr. Scherina, your page is on fire. Our page is on fire. Many in our network are on fire. And it's literally the answer. Truly, it is the answer. And Dr. Scherina and I are just as connected to our faith as you could possibly get. So what I'm about to say, I don't take this phrase lightly. It will literally be the answer to millions of prayers. Because I know, moms, you're up late at night scouring the internet, digging into those Facebook groups, reading every comment in the Healing Seizures Naturally Facebook group, reading every comment in the Healing Autism Naturally group, going into every influencer and every article you can, and you're looking for healing. You're looking for that start, that key that really unlocks full, actual healing. Not kind of sort of healing. You're not staying up late at night. You're not down on your knees praying to God saying, give me a little bit. You're saying, give me access to full healing. You will find that in a PX Docs practice. I know that's a bold statement, and I know the science and I know the experience. That's why we've called it the Experience Miracles Podcast. We see that every single day. We know the science of how it got there, and we know the science of how to get the healing happening. We know the exact sequence, the exact plan, and the exact techniques, and we've taught it to thousands of chiropractors, and they're on our directory. So you go to pxdocs.com, and you go to the directory, you go to Dr. Scherina's page, and you go to her directory, and you go to these places, and that's your first action step is you get in connected to this kind of healing, to this kind of doctor, because, and I'm going to pretty much leave it at that as the action at the end of this podcast episode, because all of the other ones, and we'll get those experts on here too. We will talk about all the supportive and supplemental healings on this podcast, but we're going to talk about it way less in distribution than we're talking about this. This is the conversation you're going to hear on this podcast again and again. Real, actual root foundational nervous system healing, because everything starts there and we need to start there to get it moving forward. So to get the most out of this incredible doctor that you got to meet and hear from today, I've mentioned it 5 times, I think. Here comes the 6th. You got to go to the show notes. It is at Dr. Scherina, so DrSCHERINA. And then I feel like, and then the BAM emoji should come right after that. I don't think you can put emojis into your, or the fire emoji. If you follow our content, I'm kind of emoji. All right. But that's what your page should have. And so that Instagram page, which has exploded, tens of thousands of followers in the last couple of weeks, right? Because the content is just so valuable.
Yeah, that's huge. And I actually want to touch on something that you're saying. We're talking about time, and a huge comment, I hear frustration again that I'm seeing is, can we still heal? when we've waited. And a lot of my posts, they're educational. I'm not here to bash anyone. I'm not here to shame or guilt. This is because this knowledge is now accessible. Had this knowledge been accessible when I was a child, things would have looked vastly different, yeah. Right? So this is not to shame our parents. Our parents did the best that they could with the knowledge they had. Now that we know better, we can move towards better. So one of the main questions I'm getting, I just posted about colic and babies and what birth trauma is. And we all know birth trauma doesn't always seem traumatic. It can be prenatal stress. It can be those simple things. So now let's say child is 13 years old, maybe even in their 20s, maybe even in their 30s. Maybe it's you as an adult listening to this. Can you still heal? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Like, please still seek the healing that you need and that you deserve.
Yeah. Thank you for hitting that point too, because honestly, every single person in every single episode we've done, we've addressed that. We had Nancy Monica on and we did a deep dive into seizures and we said exactly that. Mm-hmm. We had Beth Lambert and the Documenting Hope episode went out today and we said exactly that. And that healing, is that neuroplasticity is in every single one of our kiddos and it's in us too. This whole conversation about going this deeply, this potently into the nervous system with healing, well, that's what's really cool. So in the past, people put limits on neurological healing. One, because they didn't have the understanding of neuroscience that we're blessed and afforded to have today. And number two, even if they did understand that the nervous system was plastic and could heal, even in adults and teenagers and everything, they maybe didn't have the tools, right? And the techniques to actually create it. So once again, it's the same conversation from this podcast. It can absolutely happen. It does absolutely happen. And it will absolutely happen as long as you take the first foundational step. And I like, my favorite word you used today was the us. When I asked you the question earlier, and it's crazy because Scherina knows this in my history, and I've been blessed to save a lot of our pediatric nervous system focused chiropractors from this path. This was God's journey for me. Yo, I covered this on the Perfect Storm episode. I did everything. I built a clinic. When I got into this work, nervous system healing, I thought my responsibility to you and your kids was to do everything all at once under one roof. So all the supportive things, I did those too. And what I saw 3-5 years with the busiest clinic in the world for doing this stuff, before it was cool, before it was on Instagram, and before it was on online, is it's not all the same. And so, yes, it may sound like a homer answer that two chiropractors say that nervous system focused chiropractic is the first foundational step. I need you to know this about Dr. Scherina and I. The only thing we care about is your child healing. So if it was something different, we'd be on this podcast, this animated, this excited to tell you about that. We are only going to send you in the direction of healing happening. That's what God put us. And if there's two people that are really clear in God's purpose for them, even if sometimes we would like to leave the email unread from God and say, I'm a little busy right now, buddy. You want me to do that too? And so Dr. Scherina is going to be teaching a network seminar to our chiropractors next month. See what I did there? I even stuck that into the podcast here, buddy. And Dr. Tony's going to be in the front row taking this seminar. And so Dr. Scherina's got to add to her schedule to teach it, and I'm going to add to her schedule to take it. And you know what the answer is? Okay, maybe not next month. But the answer is yes, because your kids and you need it. You deserve it from us. And so we're going to bring it to you. So I'm closing this podcast down with highly empowering and encouraging and just hoping I'm coming through this microphone with one of my best friends in this healing world. And she's coming through it too, to just give you a big old hug, put our hand around your shoulder and lead you into a nervous system focused chiropractic office, because you'll see we wear these shirts all the time in our practice. Healing happens here. And so we want you to get there. So everyone, we love you like crazy. I wanted this one to go long. I wanted to go into each of these details. I can't wait to listen to the whole episode myself. I can't wait till our amazing team is going to take out all these little these little amazing 30, 60-second clips you had. So not only subscribe and share the heck out of this podcast with your mom and parent and professional tribe. Listen to every episode. If you just found us with this one, carve out some time. You know what? When you're in that barefoot walk out in nature, trying to get your nervous system to chill out a little bit, put us you're like, wait a minute, you're yelling right now. You want me to relax? Well, yeah, it's going to be empowering, which is good for your nervous system,
That's the hype. That's the hype.
Yeah, and the hype. Yeah, you want me in your life. Ask Scherina. I may never adjust you in your family, but I am your patented, perfectly crafted hype man to healing. Can that be my new nickname? The healing hype man? Yeah, we might have to.
Oh, yeah. There you go. That's perfect.
That's going to work? Okay. All right, perfect. So, boom, order the t-shirt from above down. Let's go. So just go to the directory for sure. Go to the podcast, subscribe, share, download, send it. Go to Instagram. We're going to put tons of clips of this episode out there. And so we'll do a ton of collaborative posts with Dr. Scherina so you can see her page and see our page. Share those onto your stories. Just go to it, share it. Nervous system healing happens exactly how we talked about today. And so many of your friends and your family and their children and our communities and our world needs exactly this. So this podcast, our Instagram pages, our website, pxtalks.com, that is the first essential step to getting the first essential step to healing. So I want you to take it, moms and dads out there, and I want you to give everybody you can think of a chance to take it as well by sharing it and texting it and sending it. Dr. Scherina, that was your first guest interview on the Experience Miracles podcast, but I promise you, and you can't say no to this, it is not your last. And I think we should even jump on one time, do a Perfect Storm webinar through the PX Talks platform together. And do a collaborative, but I really love you. I really respect the heck out of you. You are a world changer, and I am so grateful to God for putting us together in this work. We will get it done. It may need small, incremental milestones in the work that we're doing right now as we get these things moving forward. But we just really appreciate you, and thank you so much for your time today. And we'll see you on the next one. So parents out there, just know that healing does happen. You will experience miracles. And this podcast is here to bring you hope, answers, and drug-free help to get that job done. We'll see you on the next one.